in a way, and I know it sounds like a kind of political answer, but I really feel like I'm representing the future of Marin. And that is not only the students who are going here, because they made a huge decision to come to the College of Marin, to go to college at all, but to go to the College of Marin, either campus, in order to go ahead and either transfer into and take those transfer classes that they've had to decide to take, or they decide to enrich their life by taking courses they're just interested in, following their bliss, as we say in Marin, or they're lifelong learners, like myself, who want to take courses, again, for enrichment or for continuing their education. Or there are people who decide that they want to go right into a career and learn some skills that they can get employment and maybe even, and this is what I personally hope for, jobs that have high enough skills that they can afford to live in this county after they get out of the school, or until they get an AA degree. Or until they just get the skills they acquire, like for the biotech companies that are around here, learning some of the professional skills that they need to have that are directly related to the jobs that they want to have when they get out. I heard about someone the other day when they took some basic skills courses and got out with a certificate in competency, and he had a job at $160,000. Now that's without a degree. So that's not to be discounted in some old-fashioned way that you have to have the degree. As much as we value it, it's that in order to have a good future with a good job. Well, I don't necessarily see them as problems. Probably the only one I see as a problem to be solved is that the Indian Valley campus is underutilized. At the very time when we are poised to be able to work with the business communities that have made it their #1 priority through economic development commissions and councils. And here they have made this a priority of education, and yet we have a languishing IVC campus that's specifically dedicated to workforce development issues. So I see that as my personal #1 issue because it's a vacuum. And so #2 is to stabilize the college and keep it moving forward in its economic stability, in its accreditation, and in reaching out to high school and being able to have them realize the value of this school and the value of what it has to offer for their own personal lives, and to Marin County residents so they will understand that this is an economic development issue as well as a pride issue in the fact that we are not just an aging community that doesn't care about its young people. We do care. And we're going to put our money and our time and our interests and our votes and our attention on what we say we care about, which is the future. Well, one is to really study between meetings what it is we're going to be voting on, instead of just being people who approve whatever has been put in front of us in a packet or even on a consent calendar, is to actually spend this time between meetings studying, going to people who have been involved in that proposal, finding out what's going on. For example, with this bond measure, maybe they should have gone out before it became a crisis with the neighborhood to discuss what they were going to do to mitigate the adverse impacts of the construction around the college. Then they wouldn't have had that huge outcry against the bond measure because people would have known what to expect. So one is to be proactive, and two is to study the issues and know their full implications. And three is to be a good fiduciary. This is taxpayer money, and it's students' money, private money, and it's money that people have been so good as to contribute through their endowments, through the foundation, which was squandered away. Better oversight, and I guess it's treating it like we do our own money, because it's even more than that. It's public money. I guess that part of that is contained in the former answer about being more proactive. Instead of waiting until people complain before we turn our attention to a problem, like the Marin community college foundation. And then we find out that for the last 3 years they've been squandering the money. Well, obviously there must have been reports. They must have had an annual report of what they were doing, at least annually. And when it showed, for example, that the 2 prior years they'd only brought in $58,000, which was less than their salaries, then that's probably a red flag. And we don't have to wait to find out that a grand jury has reported on it. We're responsible for that. With the community as well, just like I mentioned about walking the community first, finding out about what's going on and letting them know, and letting people know what's going on. We need a much better outreach program. We need a much better education to the community, not just to the students, education to the community about saying, this is what College of Marin is doing. They're improving. So every time that the questions come up that people have to defend, who are the incumbents, have to defend about accreditation, have to defend about the foundation, have to defend about all the other issues that have happened that have been negative. We don't ever want to be in a position where we're having to defend. We want to be the ones to go out there and be proud and say, this is what we're doing lately, this is what's happening, and get some press around it. Go to advocacy groups, go to the Rotary, go to community groups that are actually involved in things. Let them know, because this is a kind of a close-knit community we're in, and word of mouth. If we start out the good news, it'll pass. It'll get around. I don't quite understand the implication of the question of hurting people. I assume you mean that if it's not done correctly, that it means that, for example, disabled students, ESL students, if it's not done correctly, it means in my mind, that we're not paying attention to the students who may have difficulties, where we have some budget cuts and we all of a sudden just leave those people out of the loop. That's one way you hurt people who don't have a voice. And that's something that should definitely be avoided. We're at a community college. This is not ivory tower time. This is a time to say we have to accept 100% of the people who want an education here in our community, from our community. So that means that we have an obligation to find a way that they can be served here, they can be educated here, and they can transfer from here or get a skill here. Everybody. That's huge. That's a huge responsibility, and it's one that we should fulfill. Well, since I'm not an incumbent, other people would know more about that question than I do, but since I was on the Marin County Board of Supervisors, I knew we were governed by the Brown Act, for example, and it meant we couldn't discuss our votes on issues outside of the public domain. We had to be transparent to the public, and they had a right to hear our deliberations unless we were in closed session and discussing a legal matter with liability to the entity, in this case the college. I don't understand what other kinds of situations you're seeing that the Ed Code would... Well, we have requirements in accreditation, of course, and so to that extent we are also accountable. But that accountability is also to our day-to-day budget. It's to our faculty, it's to the unions, it's to the community and the students. And so we're personally accountable as the board to be responsible that every one of those legal requirements are met. Well, it's interesting that you say this position requires a code of ethics. I think that any job requires a code of ethics. I think that a non-paying job requires the same code of ethics that a paying job does. An elected position has an even higher ethical requirement in my mind, because you're representing. There are 250,000 people approximately in Marin County. They count on the fact that the people that they elect in any position, high or low, all the way from, they elect the president, they elect their school board, college board, city council. Every one of them are held to, am I representing the people that elected me, even the people who didn't vote for me? Am I really representing them? Or am I doing something that I better go back to them and tell them why I may have a different viewpoint, get their feedback, because I'm a representative. That's the total function. It's a product in a way, and that product is representative. So if I don't agree, I have to go back ethically and educate the people the best I can as to why that may not be the best thing anymore. Maybe their opinion will change. If it doesn't, then that's really a turmoil. I've been in that position before where I felt like, for example, people were against the homeless community in this town. And I felt like we needed to do something for them. And it was all a process of education. And having them realize that by providing shelter, providing job skills training, things like that, that would actually minimize the homeless population better than corralling them or shipping them out of town.